Client-Side Web Development Lesson 25. Today we're going to be discussing JavaScript best practices. So we'll look at best practices for creating unobstructive scripts, the importance of separating content, presentation, and behavior, importance of following web standards, how to read and display browser information, how to use features sensing to avoid errors, how to support older, less compliant browser versions, how to support non-JavaScript browsers. So let's look at some best practices out there. You want to make your code readable and easy to maintain. Make your code follow standards that won't be crippled when a new version of the browser is released. Create pages that work even without JavaScript. It will be easy to adapt code you create from one site to another site or project, and your users will thank you for creating a site that's easy to use, easy to fix when things go wrong. Another thing you want to do is you want to avoid overusing JavaScript. Many of the effects that once needed to be coded in JavaScript cannot be achieved through CSS. So things like the transformations that we used and translations and things like that. You're better off using CSS rather than JavaScript. You might also want to use popular interface components because the CPU cycles taken up by unnecessary JavaScript might hurt users in lower bandwidth areas of the world, and too much JavaScript may hurt your search engine rankings. So generally when you create a page, and we've kind of been doing it, you want to separate your content, which is the words that a visitor reads, with the presentation. That's the layout, so that would be like the CSS. The content would be the HTML, and then the behavior is your interaction with the page. So, like I said, as much as possible, you want to use CSS for the interaction, but when possible, only when absolutely necessary should you use JavaScript. And you should use only one external JavaScript file that you place in the script tag, and it should be the last in the HTML. That way it won't slow down your page load. So looking at here, you have graceful degradation. This is the process by which a user whose browser lacks the required technical features can still make use of a web page's design. And then there's this idea of progressive enhancement. So you want to enhance your site by adding style rules in a separate CSS. So that's your first task. And then on top of that, once you can't do it with CSS, then you enhance the behavior with JavaScript. One thing you want to make sure when you do add JavaScript is you add events without using inline handlers. So you want to use those add event handler methods, and I'll show you an example of that. I think we've done it before, but I'll show you another example. And then use feature sensing to ensure that JavaScript code executes only on browsers that support the features it requires. So let's go take a quick look. So I'll show you this. Go to this JavaScript page, but before we get there, first thing I wanted to kind of show you here. I'm just trying to size my window a little bit. All right, there we go. All right, so this is the JavaScript page here. So we'll have it here. So a couple things that I have here is I have this JavaScript, this H1, have an H2, which I have an ID that I'm going to print a message in. I have a target. I have a show error just to kind of show how to handle errors using the try-catch block, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we also going to be able to print out some navigation information as well as a button to show the browser info. And this is finally the JavaScript JS load tag that actually loads the JavaScript that is in here. All right, so let's go back to our so one thing I want to show you is the inline handler. So let's go back here and show you this. So the first thing we do, if you notice a couple things, we load the JavaScript JS down here, and then we automatically load, call the init function in our JavaScript JS to do some kind of like setup for our page. And what's that setup? Let's look at the init. Init is over here. So one thing we do, if you look up here, I just get this this target element. I do use get element by ID. And then so when this init function fires, I set up my mouse over and mouse out event on that target div. And the target div is this div over here. So if you notice, when I put the mouse in, it does something, and it prints a message over here, and when I go out, it prints a different message. So what is that message? So I create two handler functions. A mouse over, so when I put the mouse over, it prints mouses over the div, and then I have a mouse out, which prints the mouses out of the div. And that's what you're seeing here when I put my mouse in and out of the div, like that. Okay, so that's how you add events without using inline handlers. You call the, on the particular element that you want to add the event handler, you just call add event listener. And then you tell it what event to listen to. And then you associate the function that you want to fire when that event hits. So when the mouse over event is generated, it's going to call this handle mouse over, which is this function up here. All right. So we added the event handler, showed you that. So you want to set up your event handlers in the external JavaScript file, and you may, and the reason for that, for using those add event handler methods, is you may have multiple third-party scripts that are also adding event handlers to the same component. So, and that makes the code more flexible there. Like you said, we're going to use the add event listener method, which I showed you how to do that. And this allows you to add multiple listeners to the same object. All right, so you want to make sure that any JavaScript you use in HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, you want to avoid being browser specific, and so you never want to use browser specific HTML and CSS. Error handling. One way to handle an error, so if you want to kind of bulletproof your JavaScript, you want to use the try-catch mechanism. And this is where I'm demonstrating it down here in this show error function. So here what we're doing is we're trying to get this, use this example, this field variable that's stored in the example object. The only problem is example doesn't exist. So this is going to throw an exception, and it's going to print out an exception out to the console. So this is what we're going to do here. Let's go back here. All right, so if I go ahead and hit inspect and go to console, and then I hit show error, you're going to see the error message appear down here. And this is that exception that got thrown. And it says it cannot access example before initialization. All right, so if any time in your code where you think you may have an exception, you want to use that try-catch block, like you saw there. You want to make sure you document your code well. You want to put comments before each function explaining what it does. Put inline comments when necessary. Use a comment whenever the original author can pass specialized knowledge. Use comments for commonly used code modification. So, for instance, for all of this is kind of like a good standard. You want to at least put comments on all your functions, which I've done here. So you want to put the name of the function and a slight description of what it does. So here I've kind of described here, this adds the event listener. Show error, this just shows an example of the try catch. So in all of these, I've kind of described what each one of these does. All right. So usability, you want to consider the user's point of view when adding functionality. You want to reuse your functions whenever possible. So place code in modules so you can reuse the modules. So one example that I did here, actually that's going to go in line with my next example. So the JavaScript, there's certain objects that come built into JavaScript, built in your browser, that you can use to kind of interrogate the browser to get information like what the code name of it, the name, the version, etc. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let me go back here. Okay, so here if I want to show some browser information, if I click Show Browser Info, this prints out this browser information. So as you can see here, I'm outputting the code name, the name, the app version, and then the user agent, the language, and the platform. I'm on an Intel-based Mac, so that's why it says Mac Intel. So you could use this if you want to do some special processing depending on what browser they're using, what version. You generally should try to shy away from doing browser-specific things, but if you have to, this is the way you would detect the type of browser, what machine it's on, etc. So if you look at the code that I use some reusable code because I call this Navigator app code name. Now, one of the things is some of these properties are actually deprecated. They're still supported, but they're saying, hey, don't use them going forward. So like the app code name, app version, and platform, these are all deprecated. User agent and language is not, so these you can still use, but these you probably shouldn't. And I'm reusing this add paragraph because what I'm doing here is I'm passing in a message, which is a string that's going to get printed, and then I'm passing in the node to add the string to. So right now I'm always adding it to this navigation node, and if you look back here, the navigation node is this div over here. So this is where I'm printing all that navigation information to. And then all I do is I pass it something different. So the nice thing is instead of retyping this code in the same function here, I type it once and then I just call this function over and over and reuse this code. And that's what the intention of that slide that talks about reusing functions is all about. So you want to do that as much as possible. Cross-browser scripting, you want to check for the existence of a function before trying to use it. One way to do it is say if whatever the function you're trying to use, because if that returns true, then that means it exists, and then you'd probably use it. So, supporting non-JavaScript enabled browser. Most modern browsers includes an option to turn off JavaScript. Some firewalls and antivirus software blocks JavaScript. and some ad blocking software prevents scripts from working. And older mobile phones has little or no JavaScript support. Some visually impaired people use special browsers that don't support JavaScript. So there may be times where you want to make sure that at least your website supports non-JavaScript browsers in some way. And then there's a no script tag, and this tag sends a message to all non-JavaScript browsers. So keeping JavaScript optional, you want to keep JavaScript in a separate file like we did. Assign event handlers in JavaScript. And if you need JavaScript for an application such as a game, you want to warn users that it's required. Okay, so warning them not to turn off the JavaScript. So avoiding errors, you want to use a separate JavaScript file like we've been doing. Use feature sensing. Again, feature sensing is this example that we had right here, where we're checking to see if the function exists. And also you want to test your pages with JavaScript turned off to see how it reacts. And that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you later.